Welcome back to the Interact Post. Today, Article 11 will include us going over and discussing leaks related to Genshin, specifically looking at Clorinde, Sigewinne, and a bunch of different Natlan stuff. Once again, we do want to say that all the info we have found you can find yourself, and we are not beta testers and have no inside information whatsoever. We will be using various sources that everyone has access to. Now with all that out of the way, onto the video. So last time when we were together, we kind of were looking at the artifact sets, the two different artifact sets for 4.6 that was coming out alongside of the time period that Arlecchino was coming out, and we looked at the overload reaction set specifically. Well, now we want to take a little bit of time to look at the Electro-Charged reaction set that is going to also be coming out, we believe is going to be coming out with the speculation. So looking at least with Electro-Charged, it seems that Clorinde and Sigewinne are going to be great characters for this. It seems like both of them have a lot of it seems like Clorinde may have some abilities we'll talk about in a minute when we talk about both characters, that this specific character is going to help with, Electro-Charged damage. She's going to be a lot better for it, so maybe she has something special where maybe she gets more damage, or we'll talk about that in a minute about what she's going to do. And then Sigewinne is supposed to be really, really good for Electro-Charged and supposed to be extremely good for a Clorinde team. So it seems like these two characters are going to be good for this reaction set specifically. Most likely, if this is a damage set, it's going to be good for Clorinde, since we believe she's going to be a DPS. Looking at maybe some other characters though, before we go into those two characters, I want to talk about Raiden and talking about Cyno. Both Raiden and Cyno in their bursts are immune to the Electro-Charged whenever they are hit themselves. So if you're standing in water and you pop a Raiden burst, you will basically not get electrocuted or electrocution stunned basically whenever you are in your ult. And it's the same thing for Cyno. When you're in your ult form, you will not be stunned by the Electro-Charge reaction. If you're standing in water and you're creating all this, electro around you, you're going to get electro on you, especially if something's hitting you with electro, you're also going to get hit. This makes it a little bit nicer so that you don't have to worry about basically getting electrocuted in this instance. So maybe this set that is going to be helping Electro-Charged might be really good for them. And if it helps, let's say it just buffs, maybe it gives it a damage bonus in general to Electro and Hydro, then this might be good for someone like Nervalette. So I use Nervalette in a Taser team, or the Electro-Charged reaction team. I use him with Yae Miko, Beidou, and Kazuha. So that might be something to use for there. Because of the ability to do this, I know Ayato is another one that you can use. This set, depending on what it does, if it just helps the Electro-Charge reaction itself, or it gives a buff to characters for attack, it can be good for all the characters I've mentioned, probably except for Nervalette, since he doesn't work off of attack for his damage. But these other characters could use it extremely well. So I'm kind of interested to see what this first set is, because all we've really got is the Electro-Charge idea.
Right. Everything you've said there I really like, and I'm just really excited to get new artifact sets, even including the overload that we talked about at the end of the last video, because I just love building my characters, and I only pull for the 4 stars. I'm just at that point. So when we get new artifact sets, I feel like I'm more excited about these new sets than I am about any of the new characters. Chiori, Arlecchino that we talked about last video, Clorinde, because it gives me so many options, new options, that I can go back to characters either that I still haven't built, that I'm trying to finish out, or even more so, go back to old characters and rebuild them. A great example of that we had at the beginning of Fontaine was when we got the Golden Troop set, that's Farina's set. People started going back, and the main talk was rebuilding your Fischl. But you can also do that with, if you're doing any skill damage focused character, and you even mentioned in the last video Yae Miko that you rebuilt on Golden Troop. And so just like that, the hype I got out of that, and even Navia's set, along as Song of Days Past, or I guess you could say Chevrous's 4-piece set, I've used that on other characters. I used Song of Days Past on my Chi-Chi instead. I used Nighttime in the Whispering Woods, or whatever it's called, Navia set. I built that on my Ningguang. So like those two domains, and now with this third one in Fontaine coming out with 2 new sets, I'm just excited to have new, I guess you could say, new toys to play with in a sense, just to throw around on different characters and really have fun, because that's how I enjoy the game. I just really love building characters and trying out all these different, even unconventional things. So
Yeah, I think it's just going to be great in general to see what we can come up with, how it's going to change maybe old characters, how it'll change new. Once again, that overload reaction set as well could change old characters as well with Chevro's, like we talked about in the last video and took some time on. But looking a little bit further into now talking about Clorinde, it seems like her kit is going to be based off of energy recharge. That is an interesting speculation that has been getting thrown out. In my personal opinion, it is a little bit, not necessarily frightening, but a little bit interesting to kind of see how she's going to be clashing. I wouldn't say fighting, but clashing with Raiden. So Raiden, as you guys know, is based heavily off of energy recharge, especially when you have her personal weapon. So getting like 260% energy recharge is about normal, because that's kind of where you want to sit, 250, 260 on the energy recharge, especially when you have the weapon, because of how well she scales off of it. Now, when you have things like Staff of Homa or something, when you're trying to just go for a high damage hit, then you start to focus into, something, you go down to 180. But Clorinde, to see that she's going to be based off of energy recharge is kind of interesting to see. So I'm actually genuinely excited to kind of see what she does in difference to how Raiden works, because no matter what, we don't have, every time they come out with a new 5-star specifically as well, it's not just a rinse repeat of old characters. So I really like to see, even if they use the same things, Tighnari came out and he works completely differently than Alhaitham came out way later, and Alhaitham works differently than he does. They both have that same or similar scaling, but Alhaitham does things maybe a little bit stronger, but Tighnari may do things a little bit, has a little bit better control with it and can do some interesting stuff with Raiden or whatnot. So I'm kind of interested to see how this is going to play out between Clorinde and Raiden and how those two are going to be different.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm pretty pumped for Clorinde as well. Even though I'm not, once again, I'm not targeting her necessarily, but if Sigewinne is on her banner, which Sigewinne will talk about here in just a few minutes, I'm going to want to pull on that banner, and I'd be totally cool with getting a Clorinde, because that does sound so cool. The whole idea of her kit being related to energy recharge, and, Raiden being the only character in the game right now that uses energy recharge specifically to just turn it into raw damage, essentially. So seeing what Clorinde maybe does with that, because the Hoyoverse team, they get pretty creative with some of the kits on their characters. So it's always exciting to get, like you're saying, they never rinse and repeat. So like when they put out these characters, it's just always exciting to see how is this character going to work and whatnot. So I'm excited for it.
I think that's really, really good just in general to see kind of exactly like you said, just see how it's going to be kind of interesting, weird, different, fun. And I know you like to build things differently, so if someone has something fun to throw around, I know you are like at the front to make sure to see what someone did interesting that you've kind of no one else really thought of.
Yeah.
But looking once again a little bit into Clorinde as well, it seems like as well with the Electro-Charged, she's in the energy recharge things, it seems like she might even have some ability to use some overload reactions, which some people were speculating that may not be the case, just because of you're putting 4.6 Arlecchino is supposed to be a heavily focused on overload. Then in 4.7 you're going to bring out a new Electro DPS for overload. It just doesn't seem necessarily a smart way, but this may be just a way that things can change obviously throughout time, so this may fall off the radar. She may just only be Electro-Charged, and she may get maybe different buffs from the two different reactions. So at this point I wouldn't say put too much salt in either way of how this is going to go. But looking at Sigewinne, the other character, the 4-star specifically, she's probably going to be a healer, and it seems really, really cool because she's going to be focused on being a sub DPS through that Electro-Charged reaction, and possibly a healer. She's a doctor, so maybe that makes a little bit more sense. But with that kind of just maybe makes a really good support role for some more Hydro characters. As a good support role as a 4-star. Looking at some other 4-stars we've gotten in the past, in Sumeru we got Candace, which in my personal opinion she was a little bit of a letdown. That was a little bit rough. And then now that we're getting Sigewinne, hopefully she can maybe pick up the pace again about some good 4-star characters. Obviously we have Xingqiu, but looking at Sigewinne helping with that Electro reaction with Electro-Charged and being a good support role, I'd like to see a good Hydro character do some off-field damage as a 4-star specifically again. Because Furina obviously does really good off-field damage with her skills.
Right. And I think to kind of bring to your point about the 4 stars being good. I think what makes a 4-star really good, aside from just them having good scalings and a kit that can actually be used for different things, is I think one of the reasons that you brought up Candace, right? I'll just use her. I think the reason that she was a letdown is not necessarily because she has a bad kit design, and not even because she would have what some would consider bad scalings. It's just that she's kind of a hybrid support, but also like damage dealer. And so when you try to design a kit, especially on a 4-star that is branched like that, maybe it just affects the way people take that, right? I built my Candace as a DPS. She is on a 4-piece Nim stream. She's my Hydro damage dealer. She's basically 4-star Child or 4-star Ayato. And yeah, it's a little lacking, but I can still hit 30k vaporizes, and like, so it's there, but it just, once again, maybe it's not as flowy and cool to just use Child or just use Nervalet. Obviously, we have Nervalet. Why would you use literally anyone else, right? I know that's the argument, because Nervalet's just quite literally at the top of the meta and just trumps everything. He's so amazing, and I wish I did not skip him. I'm starting to, feel like, man, I should have pulled Nervalet. Maybe that's who I'll pull in terms of 5 stars. Vixen, that's who I will pull.
Maybe we'll just have to see, I guess.
Right.
But really looking at, I think, once again, these 4 stars and the 5 stars, the differences between them, I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they play out. I know I've said that probably 40,000 times, but I really am. These 4 or 5 characters that we've talked about, I'm just extremely excited to really see everything that they can kind of come together. These are new leaks that we're kind of getting out, so I've been waiting for a long time, especially for Arlecchino. If you guys don't know, I'm a huge Arlecchino fan, so to kind of see what people are going to bring out for these characters.
Pull the C6, you won't.
Well, we'll see with the C6 maybe. But looking at the idea beyond just even Fontaine itself, never mind the characters, but just Fontaine, looking into Natlan. We already know, and we've talked about Murata in the past, how there might be 2 different Archons, 2 versions of them, very similar to Raiden, how there's multiple versions of her. There's 2 different versions of Nahida, or there was a previous, now there's a late. The same thing with Farina as well. So there's just so many, right? It seems like that might follow again with Natlan and some cool things. 2024 is the year of the dragon, and we're now going into Natlan, which might have a lot of, dragon sovereigns and a lot of dragon ideas and maybe some idea with characters.
Oh, cool. I didn't think about that.
Exactly, and that's kind of cool as well to think about. So now that we're kind of switching and turning gears, I found it really interesting how, I thought the Harbinger that would come out in Natlan would be Capitano. And Capitano is, he makes a little bit more sense. I believe he's from Natlan, so it makes a little bit more sense why he would be there as the playable Harbinger there. But it seems like both him and Columbina are going to be in the plot for Natlan itself. And then that's kind of where Capitano maybe falls off. There's a lot of different speculation behind Capitano himself, and we can maybe get into that later as well if you guys want to ask us. As well, just link the Discord right here. By the way, go join our Discord if you guys want to talk about that. I would be plenty fine talking about why I believe that Capitano is not alive. But anyways, looking specifically at the other Harbinger, because there's possibly 2 Harbingers that are becoming, at least in the plot itself in Natlan. It seems like Columbina and Capitano maybe falls off, and we may not use him as a playable character, at least as we know right now. It seems like the playable Harbinger is going to be Columbina. And that's kind of really, really cool to think about, because it's all of a sudden Columbina has just basically come into the fray, almost like, well, when did she even get here? So it's kind of interesting to see that, because Arlecchino kind of made the same appearance with Fontaine, with at least leaks and discussions and whatnot for speculations way back in Sumeru. So kind of interesting to see how this stuff kind of plays out, because I'm not going to lie, I really thought that our Marionette was going to be jumping into the fray to become the Harbinger here, because we've gotten some talks about her a lot.
Yeah, I had the same thought months ago, thinking that Sandrone would be playable. Even in Fontaine, like you just pointed out, Arlecchino was kind of a surprise. I know, at least for me. And I was like, oh, cool, it's going to be Arlecchino. All right, cool. But I remember, during Sumeru, just talking more about Sandrone for some reason. I know, we have another friend talks a lot about Sandrone, and so maybe that's why. But I don't know. I really am excited that it is Columbina. She was one of the ones I was hoping we would get soon. her and Sandra. Those are the two I want to come soon, as well as Pantalone, or you could say Dark Baiju. I know some people make that joke, or like evil counterpart Baiju. But I'm excited for the new Harbingers, and I know you, Vixen, you are collecting all the Harbingers, and I definitely have had an urge more than once in the past to kind of follow that, because the Harbingers are just so stinking cool, and I can't get over it sometimes.
I'm looking at Columbina, just kind of seeing what she's going to be. She just kind of came out of the fray, very similar to how, you know, Arlecchino, like I was talking about, came into the, you know, fray all of a sudden in Sumeru. So I think that'll be kind of interesting to see what happens there. I'm really interested to see what they do with Capitano in the story, as well as whether they make him playable or not. But once again, I will talk about that at a later different date. Besides that, though, that's kind of everything we have for this week. So besides that, we'll see you guys in the next one.